When welcome everybody. Today we are studying what we've been waiting for since chapter 4. Because in chapter 4 we learned that the real way to make impact is through thinking in detail. Hasidus explains that the left brain is the key to the crown, which is higher than intellect. So if we wanted the insight, it gives a flash of understanding, but even insight has its source. Its source is a level which is higher than intellect, called the crown, and it's through the left brain that we're going to have a access to the crown. And on chapter 4, it said that it's not enough just to say, oh, just tell me the point. I just need to understand the point. It's important to go into the details. The details is what makes things real. So the first time which we're going to go into the details is really this chapter. Chapter 10, we start the details. And last week, we explained that the key to understanding how there's nothing else besides him. Ein od milvado. There's nothing else besides God. Now, how's that possible? Isn't there a world, and don't we have things? I'm using a camera right now, and I'm reading from a I'm reading from a holy book. There's more things just besides God alone. So last week we explained the concept of tzimtzum, which is contraction, and we used the metaphor of a light, that everything, there's a spectrum of light, and every object is either absorbing or reflecting. So it's either absorbing the light and reflecting. It's actually doing both, and it's reflecting some of the light back into our eyes, so we perceive a green object, a red object, a purple object, because some of the light is being absorbed and some of the light is being reflected. And that's really how we can say that's a metaphor to understand how there's nothing else besides him, because he is allowing certain aspects of himself to be absorbed and like not perceived, and certain aspects of himself to be perceived. So the essence is always here, except we're only allowed to perceive and experience the things which are given permission to be perceived. So it's like in a cup of water, there's enough energy to be able to power our entire city. It's just that it's absorbed into itself. And what are we allowed to perceive? Only the fact that it's a cup of water that can refresh us when we drink it. And that energy inside it is not allowed to be revealed, and it would be destructive if it would be revealed, because then I wouldn't be able to enjoy the cup of water. So that's that concept of tzimtzum, of contraction. So there is nothing else besides him, and yet we have a world, and both are true. That's what we learned last week. And this week, now we're going to go into the details, that it's important to, at the beginning of all reflection, we always start before tzimtzum. Before the first contraction, there are 3 levels. And these levels are called Yachid, Echad, and Kadmon. Yachid, we say in English, the one and only. So the first one is Yachid. It's the only. Even though Yachid means it's oneness, but there's not one, two. It's just total oneness. Yachid is the only. And then Echad means he's one. But when you say one, it could be one, two already. And then there's Kadmon, is precedence. He's preceding the process of creation. So these are 3 levels. Yachid, total oneness. Echad, one. And Kadmon, preceding. And we're going to explain that there's difference between Yachid. Yachid means he's alone. Echad means that we already have the building blocks. We've already established through reverse engineering that there's 10 building blocks that are going to create all of creation. We've already established that the code, but each building block individually is unlimited and undefined. We haven't figured out yet at this point in time. It hasn't been established how much of each building block is necessary to come and create a world. That's the second stage before Tzimtzum. Echad, one, the one. And then Kadmein, preceding, means we've already planned out how much of each of the building blocks needs to be activated in order to create every last detail of our world. The three levels of before Tzimtzum. And when we pray, it's important to contemplate on these three levels, because when we pray all the way back, all the way to the top, the Atzmos, the essence, which is behind the three levels that are before Tzimtzum. Just wait 1 second. I'm just going to come back in a second. Back. Okay, so and then I'm going to show you something over here that we've learned previously, that when you want to deliver a message, you use a metaphor, and that's called like the length of a river, because the raft goes down the river and delivers the products from upriver downriver, and that's called the length of the river. But if you really want to understand, then you need multiple metaphor. So that is called the width of the river, where you're going to have multiple metaphor, and you compare the lesson of each metaphor to be able to understand what it really means. And so I'm going to show you inside, just so we plan what's going to be happening in this wonderful text. Let me just show you. Didn't work. Yes, now. Okay. So over here, this is where the text is going to start, and we're going to just explain the three levels, and then we're going to bring the Hebrew words used in various texts to explain the three levels. So we're familiar with the terminology of Yachid, Echad, and Kadmon, the only, the one, and the preceding. Then we're going to start at the bottom of the page. We're going to give the first metaphor to deliver the information. Then till here, that's till here, the first metaphor. That's going to be the delivery. Then we're going to start delivering multiple metaphor, so we can now compare. We can do the width of the river. We can compare the metaphor to each other and ask the question, how does each metaphor teach us something different about the three stages? And we're really concerned about the first stage, Yachid. We really want to understand what's going on. What is Yachid all about? Then when we turn the page, and we're going to explain the second level of Echad, of one, where the 10 building blocks are already established, that just we haven't measured how much we're going to use each one. It's just all in potential. And then the third level, Gimel, the third level is when everything already is measured out, how much we're going to use. And that's the third level, called Kadmein, which is called preceding. And that's what we're going to be doing. So that's just the plan. Now we can go back. Okay. So Rabbi Smith, should we bring it up, the text on the website, from the website? Okay, let's start reading. And from now, at this point in time, from everything that we've learned, all the training that we've had for the previous 9 chapters, now there is to understand derech prat, using the path of the parts. We know this is really important, because so far we've only been doing derech klal. We've only treaded on the holistic path, but derech prat, when we go into all the parts, that's what's really going to make impact on us. So this is really exciting. We're going to learn the parts of all the 4 worlds of Abiyah. Abiyah is an acronym for Atzilus, where the world of Atzilus, where God establishes his personality so we could relate to him. Bria is God's audible thought, where he creates the basic concept, where he thinks up the souls. That's what the human souls are. Yetzirah, the world of God's audible, well, God's speech, where He plans out the world. It's also called it's a world of angels, because the angels are the code behind the actual action. Asiya is the last world, the physical world that we live in, and that's a world of action. So we're going to learn. We're going to go into the parts of these worlds. Dahainu. This means we're going to go into all the parts of the idea of the 10 spheres, the 10 building blocks, the abiyah of the 4 worlds. Keli, we're going to go into the light and the vessel. The vessel is is like the hardware, and the light is like the software, the program. So we have in a vessel, we have the water and you have the cup. You have the light and you have what holds the light. So Keli is software and hardware. In the world, we have software and hardware. Matter and energy. Also, that's another way of saying Keli, matter and energy. And how they enclose in each other. In other words, the hardware and the software of the world, they function in a partnership. We're going to learn all the parts. Gam b'chol sphera, we're also going to learn in every single building block, in every single sphera, shemischalekas leprate pratis. Each sphera actually divides into parts of parts. So in other words, each sphera has 10 parts. Just like there's 10 spheres, well, each sphera has 10 parts, and each one of those 10 parts has another 10 parts. Kamei gam, like for example, also bebechinas chesed de malchus. Now this is going to be like overwhelming, and then we're going to explain, right? Chesed de malchus, the kindness of God's kingship, of His expression, shebachachma, which is in the insight, sheba malchus, in the expression, the chesed of kindness. The Kahai Gavna, and similar to this. Now, let's just go back, make things a little simpler. We just did 5 levels over here of reality. But everybody should easily be able to do 2. You basically, you do, there's the end state that you want, and then there's what you do. So for example, if you are dealing with children, your end state is kindness, but you're making limits and boundaries that, they can't go to sleep too late, right? So my presentation, what I'm presenting, the vessel that I'm presenting is limits. We're setting limits over here. So it's in, being strict. But my intent, the end state that I'm looking for, the light which I'm looking for, is that the child is able to function. So I'm actually looking for kindness. So I'm presenting the vessel that I'm presenting is strictness and boundaries. My intent is absolute kindness. So that's called a compound emotion, and every intelligent person should be able to manifest compound emotions and can think, well, what's the end state that I want? Okay, how am I going to present to be able to get that end state? That is called a compound emotion, just a light and a vessel. But over here, we just read 5 levels, and I actually finished. My personal story is that I actually finished all 54 chapters. I learned it from my teacher, and I went back to him and said, listen, I learned the whole thing, and I don't understand these 5 levels. And he said to me, oh, simple. This is the process of creation, 5 levels of process of creation. I said, what? So then he explained it to me. Now I'm going to explain it to you now. Okay, chesed de malchus, right? Okay, so chesed de malchus, shebachachma malchus de chesed, 5 levels, right? It's not so hard once you understand what we're trying to achieve. It's more than a compound emotion. This is 5 levels. 5 levels in order to implement something. Chesed is the end state. Kindness. In other words, when you create the world, the end state that God is looking for is kindness. Kindness to the creations. The Malchus, what's behind that kindness is the Malchus, is God's kingship. But we always translate kingship as expression. So this is the kindness from God's expression, Shebachachma, which is in the Chachma's insight. So there's a program. This is the intelligence. In other words, when you in any system, if anybody studied engineering, in any system, in an intelligent system, you need to be able to measure if we're actually achieving the results. So you need an intelligent system. You need some sort of sensor that is censoring, I wanted to achieve kindness, are we actually doing it? So again, for 3 levels. The kindness, that's the end state. The malchus, which is God expressing himself to create the end state. Sheba chachma, this is the intelligence, which is you know, sensing and regulating what's going on. That's the insight. Sheba malchus, and this is inside the expression, the chesed of God's kindness. The kindness which existed before Tzimtzum. So the kindness before Tzimtzum expresses himself, but what it first needs to express is an intelligence to be able to regulate the system, and then the malchus, it presents itself, the chesed, as actual end state of kindness. So those are the 5 levels, and everybody will get the skills to be able to think on multiple levels and to understand divine process on multiple levels and to mirror divine process, because the ultimate goal is that we are the autobiography of God. So we find out that we can mirror all of these things because we have it inside our hearts. Now the Kahai Governor, then he says, and like these similar things. V'inyan yichudam v'skalusam b'bechinas hakeser. Yeah, so the 5 bullet points, 5 points is the end state of kindness comes from God's expression, which is inside God's intelligence, which is expressing his original essential kindness. Those are the 5 levels. And the Kahai Gavna and similar things we're going to understand. Vinyan Yichudam Vizkalulusam. And we're going to understand how each of these spheres, building blocks, unite with each other, Vizkalulusam, and they become one. Bebechinas HaKeser Shebachol Olam, in the driver, the crown of each world. Every world has a driver which motivates it. So each sphere really is expressed according to the driver, according to the desire, according to the crown. We need to know that the crown is always an intermediary between the higher world and the lower world, because the expression of the higher world becomes the driver of the lower world. It's like an order from an officer. The officer writes an order, and so he's expressing himself, and then that becomes the mission statement of the lower world, of the next person down the chain of command. So that's ki olam elyon l'tachten himenu ki yadua, like this is known. Haklal, we know the rule. It's known the rule. Derech kitzer, if we just look at in short, what's happening. The kingship, or the expression, in other words, the order, like a military order, Sheba'elyon, in the higher world, Nasa Kesel Tachten, becomes the crown of the lower world. Adrum HaMailas, and this goes all the way up the order of creation. This rule, this basically short rule. So when you hear Keser and Malchus, they basically depends how you're looking at it. If it's Keser as a crown, means it's on the top of the lower world. If we say Malchus, we mean the expression of the higher world. And they are like one. Okay, but now let's stop. He says, let's stop now, and let's go to how any person reflecting where they start. So, Hine, behold, mitchila, at the beginning, yesh l'chol mizbenin, there is to each person that's using their left brain and reflecting, lizbenin, he should reflect, b'mokar arishin. He should think about the original source, which in Hebrew is called, also termed, makara de kula, the source of everything. And notice the aleph at the end. In Hebrew, we would say makar, but when we say makara de kula, we're using Aramaic. So makara de kula, the source of everything. What is the source of everything? It's the essence of the unlimited light, the infinite light that is before tzimtzum, that is before the contraction, before the contraction, which we already spoke about the metaphor for that. Hanikra Mokum Pani, the name for the contraction is called an empty space. There is no empty space. It's just that now the idea of emptiness can be perceived. Canal, like we've mentioned before. Gam Sham Derech Prat. Even before the Tzimtzum, we have to go into the parts. Dafka specifically. If we want to make impact on our souls, we need to go into the parts. Huanikra Marich Bechad. And this is the idea of spending time on oneness. It says in the Talmud that anybody that spends time understanding God's oneness, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. The person spends time on that, he will live a long time. And it's also explained that his days will be long. In other words, he's going to be productive in his day. In other words, he's going to use up his days very productively. So it's not only that it's not going to live a long time, not only that, but it also means that every day will be really productive. As long as he's marich bechad, he spends time thinking about the oneness. What is that? We're going to tell you what that is. It's unbelievable. We're going to tell you what 3 things you need to think about to fulfill marich bechad, and that the impact of that is that your days will be effective. Now, when it says we need to spend time in the oneness, it's speaking about the oneness before tzimtzum. And in derech klal, if we're going to look at the holistic 3 levels, there's 3 of them. And each one of these 3 levels actually has 10 building blocks, has 10 spheres. Vahu, and the 3 levels are Yachid, Echad, V'Kadmein. Just remember these words. Yachid means one and only. V'Echad means one, as in 1, 2, 3. V'Kadmein, and Kadmein means preceding. These 3 levels are in the essence of the infinite light that is before the tzimtzum arishin, the first contraction. Now we're going to explain, bechinas yachid, what is this yachid, this mashmoy levade mamish? The definition of the word yachid means really alone. Mamish means in actuality. Levade means alone. He's in actuality alone. That Hebrew word, the definition of it is higher than a unification of parts. Because the word echad in Hebrew it means is defined as a unification of parts, making it all one. Like many become one, like the United States. There's many states, they all become one. That's echad, kiyudua. But that's not what we're speaking about. The first level is not echad. It's yachid. In the essence itself, you cannot say at that point that there's 10 building blocks. Like if we say the idea, if we're going to say Malchus the Ein Sof, if we're going to say the expression of the infinite, of the Ein Sof, means there is no end. The expression of the energy which there is no end. Shememela Muvan, if we say that it's then it's obviously understood. There must be a crown before it. There's insight. In other words, what is it expressing? If you're expressing the unlimited and you already have this attribute of expression, that means that there was some sort of driver and that there's some sort of intelligence that is expressing something. So if you say that, then you know that there's already 10. And then he says, well, this is a little difficult to understand, but we're going to explain. On the other hand, you have to say that in truth, there's no other way out. We have to say that even in the essence of the infinite light, the light that has no end, which is called alone, you have to say that there are 10 spirits inside it. In Hebrew, when we refer to this level, we're speaking, it says, he's intelligent, but it's not in the intelligence which is known. It's not intelligence which a human can understand. Like this concept is known. In the Zohar, we also, when we're referring to Yachid or Levade, that he's one and only, total oneness, we say Lav Mikol, it's Aramaic, Lav Mikol Elain Mides Klal. He's not any of these 10 attributes. And so what's going on over here? It seems like two opposites. Vainyanhu, and the explanation of the matter is like this. We have to say that even in the essence of the unlimited, there is pashut, a simple light which is totally simple. In other words, when we say light is a metaphor for his ability, this ability has no definition. So too in his if the essence has no definition, also in the expression of his self, which is called light and shine, it's called Ein Sof, the unlimited light. In other words, you have the person and what they can do. So Ein Sof means what God can, what the essence can do. The Hainu Hu B'Shmei Bilvad. Now, we're always looking for terminology in the prayer book that hints to the levels. So in the prayers, we have the word Levade a number of times. Now we know that when you see the word Levade, which means alone, you know you're referring to Yachid that's before Tzimtzum. So go through the prayers, look for the word Levade, and you'll know that that's what it's referring to. But there's also another terminology, is him and his name. Now this, him and his name Bilvad, that's what we say, him and his name Bilvad. So him and his name Biflam is like saying he and his light alone. But it also, what it means is him and his ability. Before Tzimtzum, we're going to refer to this level of him and his name alone. We're going to refer it to as Tehira Elah. Tehira Elah. Which means the upper purity. When you refine gold, if you put a little bit of another metal in it, it changes color. So it's not pure gold anymore. So Tehira Elah is the higher purity, because at this point in time, the higher purity, at this point in time, there isn't anything before the first Tzimtzum. This is God's essential light, essential ability, the way it is, specifically, with no limits. This is what is called that he's alone and there is no other besides him. That we could say on him, that he is some sort of unification of parts. To say that he's Lashon Yichud, we're going to put things together. He's alone. That's the true definition of what's going on. And in the Kabbalah and also in the prayers Friday afternoon, we say Antu Chad, he is one, but loy b'chushban, but not in the calculation of 10. However, when we say that he is wise and it's not he has insight, but it's not an intelligence that we can know, we're already admitting that there's a bunch of levels, chakim, intelligent, mavin, and understanding, which is the left brain, the detailed thinking, right? V'chazdan, and he is kind. He makes kindness. V'rachman, is compassionate. How can we say this on God if there's no parts? That's not because his essence has parts. That's God calculates in himself the potential, what he's actually going to do in actuality. After the tzimtzum harishon, after the first tzimtzum. So when we say it's intelligence, but not intelligence, so we can understand, it's not that there's an actual intelligence and kindness and different parts. It's just that he calculates in himself what is he going to do after the tzimtzum, and it's basically reverse engineering. So there are no parts. There are no parts, but if we're going to reverse engineer, then we have to say the parts came from somewhere. Like it's written in another place, Beloshen Arizal, in the name of the Arizal. The Arizal was the Kabbalist, which from his time 500 years ago, it became a mitzvah, a good thing to start revealing the Kabbalah, the soul of the Torah. And the Arizal used the language, and you explained this. Now we can understand the general, the holistic explanation of the beginning of the Zohar. The first statement of the Zohar in the Bible, the first statement is, in the beginning God created, or the more accurate translation, in the beginning of God creating the heaven and the earth. Yeah, that's the more accurate translation. So the Zohar starts, Bereish Humra de Malka, Galif Galifu B'Tihurei Ilah. The Zohar is written in a different language. It's not in Hebrew, it's in Aramaic. And it says over there, Bereish Humra de Malka, in the beginning of Hurmana de Malka, the desire of the king, Galif Galifu B'Tihurei Ilah, hieroglyphics. Galif Galifu is like hieroglyphics in English, glyph, which means to scrape out. B'tihirei law, in the upper purity, something was scraped out in the upper purity. It's not actual scraping, it's just a metaphor. In the essence of God's light, hapashit, which is simple, which is undefined, which is his ability, which is undefined. Shenikra tirei law, which is called the higher purity. Galif Galifu, there was something was like scratched out. In other words, certain things are going to be now be able to be perceived, and certain things are going to be absorbed. And this is the idea of engraved letters. Not actual engraved letters, it's just a metaphor. Uvreish Humra the Shazeh, and the Reish Humra, and the beginning of the desire, Shazeh Kashala B'Retzaina Pasha. This is when it went up in God's undefined, Pasha, undefined desire. Shu Bechinas HaKeser. What is a desire? Desire is the crown. It's one of the building blocks. And the letters which were engraved, hu bechinas malchus de Ein Sof. This is referring to the expression of the unlimited light, because he's going to express something. Letters. He's going to express letters. We're going to call them letters. Now, what we've been saying is that there's no parts. Well, obviously we see there are parts, because vim ken yesh resh v'seich. We see that there's a beginning, there's a desire, v'seich, and then there's an end. There's a desire and there's letters. In other words, a desire and some sort of way to deliver that desire. That's called Keser Umalchus, the crown and the kingship. The crown is the desire, and the Malchus is the expression, which is the deliveries. There's the beginning of a delivery system. We see that that already exists in the essence of the unlimited light. So this is, it's like two opposites. How is this possible? And we're going to need metaphor to understand this. And the explanation is when it went up in his thought. Obviously, now you see that this thought exists before Tzimtzum. His thought, and his simple desire, Ana Emlech. God said to himself, or thought to himself, Ana Emlech, I am going to be a king. And obviously, you can't be a king over your own limbs, because that's not a kingship. Kingship is when you have separate things, or at least things that perceive to be separate, and then you create a kingdom. You know why people like those games where they can make, like, be emperors, or they can create worlds? The reason why people like them is because deep down we're a autobiography of God. So God created a world, so we also have that inside us. So before Tzimtzum, God thought and he desired, Ana Emlech, I'm going to be a king. And everything is it's still in its essence. Even before he measured up in himself what what's going to be in potential, before he made any even internal plan, Dafka.
Rabbi Chirek, I just want to mention to you that it's now 8:10, and I know that you have to end early tonight. And we also had questions. If you could please briefly bullet point the 5 levels again. I don't know if you have time to do that, or you want to do that next week.
Okay, let's finish. Before that, we're going to do 2 more lines in order to start before the first metaphor. So, before he measured up everything that he's going to desire for kingship, Begali, in an open way, and that's going to happen. In other words, the process of creation is actually going to start after the first contraction, which is also in Hebrew called the empty space. There is no empty space. It's just called an empty space because that creates the perception of an empty space. Now, actually, so now is going to start Vadimian. So that's where we're gonna stop. Now he's gonna start with the first metaphor. I'm just gonna say a little bit as an introduction. The metaphor is when a person does kindness to somebody else, like they make a birthday party, and they just want an end state of kindness. They don't want to make somebody else happy. They're making a birthday party. And they do all sorts of interesting things. They make invitations, and they make balloons, and they make the cake, and they order the cake, and they negotiate, with the cake seller what they're going to write, and they give a tip, and they do so many different emotions and planning and mathematics. The person is using all different types of emotions. And it turns out, surprise, surprise, that there isn't just a kindness inside the potential of the person. There's all sorts of things. And to be able to implement that kindness, you need to be able to use multiple emotions. So now, if you reverse engineer that, you'll say that the person must have had it inside him. But you can't say that all those things of the birthday party were there before, because the person didn't even know himself. It wasn't like before he made the birthday party, everything was there already. No, it just you have to say that it was there before because you reverse engineer it. You have to say that the person had the potential for those things. But before the person did it, it's just part of his oneness, just part of what he can do. It's part of his ability as a human to be able to be kind and make a birthday party. But there was no birthday parties written in his soul. So you can have both the true. That's the metaphor number one. Both can be true. So let's just quickly repeat the 5 levels. I repeated 4, but I'm gonna just say bulletproof. I'm just a translation. Chesed, kindness, the malchus of God's expression, Shebahachma, which is inside the intelligence, Shebamalchus, which is inside the expression, the chesed of his kindness, his essential kindness. So that is the process of creation on 5 levels. Kindness, an end state of kindness, which is coming from God's expression, which is inside God's intelligence, which is expressing the essential kindness of God.
I just want to make sure I got the right words highlighted. This is in the second line of chapter 10,
Yeah.
correct?
5 levels, yes. The kindness, which is inside God's expression, which is inside the intelligence of the expression of God's essential, it doesn't say essential, but God's kindness. But we know we're going up the whole, or we're going up to the beginning of creation, which means the essential kindness in the essence, which we said doesn't exist, but we have to say it does exist, only because we reverse engineer it. So that is introduction to today, and I think it's important that everybody familiarizes themselves with these 3 terminologies. Yachid, which means also levade, he's alone, one and only, no parts. Echad is a oneness, but it's a oneness of parts, but each part of the part is unlimited potential. And then there's Kadmon is that God precedes, and on that level, God already measures up how much of each of the building blocks to use to be able to create every last detail of creation. In other words, it's all planned out even before the Tzimtzum. And you could say that these levels don't exist, right? You can say that they don't exist, but if we reverse engineering it, yes, well, we have to say it was there. We have to say, something was there. Even in Yochid, we have to say that the 10 spheres already existed, because if they came out, if that's the product that was created, you have to say that it was there in potential. And we're going to appreciate Yachid, and it's going to help us in our prayers when we learn the first metaphor, just to deliver the concept, and then multiple metaphors, and then more metaphors to understand Echad and Kadmon. And this is, of course, there's a tremendous benefit, because when we do this, before saying Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, that by thinking about that before, we are considered marich be'echad, that we're spending a long time in the oneness, and that creates a marichin yamav shnesav, that person's days and a person's years become long, which also means that their days are effective and productive. Person's years are effective and productive, because they're connecting up to the potential. There's high energy limits. Like people limit themselves, and in the prayers in the morning, you go back to the level where there's no limits. Anything's possible. We could connect to a level where the script could be rewritten in a more abundant way we could recognize the abundance that is already here in the world and in our souls, because we connected to before Tzimtzum. We not only connected to Kadmon and Echad, we connected to Yochid, the level where anything's possible.
Wow, that's beautiful, Rabbi Chirik. So in essence, there's a multitude of potentialities. That's one of the questions that was asked?
Yeah, there's it's beyond our imagination what's possible, because we can only think about, oh, God is a creator, but apparently there's many other potentialities which would be creation. I don't know what they are, but there's no limit at this point in time. There's no limit to potential. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Yes, it does.
And what was this? There was another question that came up.
How does the desire and delivery relate to the essence? Is the desire the essence and the delivery the light? Question mark.
No, they're not. They can't be the essence, because they're already specific traits. A desire is already one of the 10 spheres, and also delivery, expression is also one of the 10 spheres. It's just that they're one of the things that the essence does. The beginning of the 10 spheres would be a desire, and the result, it would be the expression, and the expression is the delivery on which the desire could be revealed. And that's, so the beginning and end are very connected. You could even almost say like they're almost like one, just that from one aspect, this is the desire, and from the other aspect, well, the desire is just a desire if there is no way to deliver that and implement that desire. So both are one. They're just different aspects of the same coin, two sides of the same coin. But they're not the essence, because it's the essence which does these things. It's like I desire, but there's me, and I desire and I express. But the expression is not me. My desire is not me. It's just that me can do these things. So the essence, Atmos, can do these things. I mean, I hope does that answer the question? Is that helpful? Rabbi Smith, any other questions?
No, that's it for now. I don't see any other questions at this moment in time.
Okay, great. Oh, great. So
yes, and next week we'll also be starting at 7:30, but then the week after that we will be going back to the regular time, 8 p.m.
Okay, great.
Okay, so thank you very much, Rabbi Chirik.
Okay, great. Thank you, and I'm going to be leaving right now.
Okay, gotta